Hello, everyone. We are glad to have you with us today for our webinar with Prestige Senior Living, Worried About Falls. We are enjoying our time with sharing all of these webinars with you across all the different areas that we serve. And so we're grateful to have you with us today. Today we have Adrian Cagigas with us. Adrian will be presenting a webinar that will be of great help for you. Adrian has a lot of experience in his background with a Bachelor of Science and a master's degree in kinesiology. He has worked with us in our communities at Prestige Senior Living, really to promote wellness. And we are so grateful for his support. A few years back, Adrian worked with us to create our Energize exercise program, which we utilize in all of our communities for the wellness of our residents. We also invite those that live in the nearby community surrounding our assisted living communities to come in and maybe schedule some classes and participate in those wellness programs. So we are really grateful that Adrian has continued to work with us, support us, do training with all of our wellness coaches and each of our communities. Prestige Senior Living has different locations throughout the Western coast, mainly in 7 different states up and down the West Coast, and as far east as Montana and Idaho, and as far south as Arizona and Nevada. And so we're grateful for all the different touch points that we have in all of our states that we work in. We also find us, of course, in Washington and Oregon and California. And we want to be here to support you. We want to be here to offer you resources, whether you are in your home and finding that you're having some difficulty navigating your home space. If you are a relative of someone, a loved one who is having difficulty in their home space where they're at, we want to offer you support for that. Whether they are in that place or you're looking for assisted living, memory care, or independent living, we want to be a resource for you. And so that's one of the benefits of our company is we get to connect with a lot of different people that help us with our wellness programs. Many of you may have been on our previous webinar with Denise Medved regarding Ageless Grace, and that was just a really great time of celebration with her and Ageless Grace as part of our wellness program. And then today we get to bring you Adrian. I do want to let you know that coming up in May and June, we are doing our marketing campaign theme centered around Not Your Grandma's Nursing Home. And the real theme of that is we are going to celebrate with open houses in all of our communities that may be nearby you, as well as we'll be celebrating our 3rd annual Prestige Sings, which is a live karaoke event with wonderful videos from our residents, our staff, our different groups in our communities. And so we look forward to celebrating that with you during the month of May and June. Also, I wanted to let you know that after today's webinar, a recording will be sent out to you, and we will also provide you a link to go and do an actual fall assessment online for the month of April. And so it really is a wonderful tool that you can use to kind of get a score back and see what your fall risk is, or maybe the fall risk of your loved one. And so we want to provide that tool for you as well for a follow-up for this webinar today. So I'm going to hand over the webinar to Adrian. Adrian, we're always grateful to have you with us. Your spirit of energy, your love for keeping seniors healthy and strong and flexible and keeping them balanced is so important to us. And we are so happy to be able to partner with you. So Adrian, I'm going to hand it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie, and thank you all of Prestige Senior Living for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you over the last almost 8 or 9 years now. It's amazing how time flies. I'm going to do a quick screen share. How'd that? Did my slide change? Did it slide? Angie? Give me a little heads up, yes or no. Yes? Okay. All right. So today we're going to talk about worried about falling. A little bit about my background. I'm a consultant for Prestige Senior Living. I own my own personal training studio in Vancouver, Washington. My background is primarily in sports medicine. I've been practicing as a licensed athletic trainer since 1996. I've worked in lots of different athletic arenas, caring for athletes of all levels. I've worked in colleges. I've worked in physical therapy clinics. I've worked in gyms. I was an athlete myself growing up. I played football, soccer, and baseball. And I had the pleasure of playing soccer at Humboldt State University for a couple of years until I got hurt. And that's really where I started my career as an athletic trainer. As I found the athletic training, I was always really fascinated with human anatomy and biomechanics and stuff. So I went on and got my, like Angie had already mentioned, my Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology from Humboldt State University, and then was able to go on and get my master's at San Jose State University. So that's a little bit about my background. But in consulting with Prestige, my primary function is really to help people reduce their over risk for falling. And today's webinar, we're going to really highlight just some of the overall risk factors that may be environmental around your home that you might not even consider. They might be so simple that you might not even think about it. And then also how you can fall proof yourself. And that's going to be the really important part about today's conversation, is really motivating everyone to get moving, because it's never too late. Remember, it's never too late to start engaging in some sort of movement program. And as we age, we start to lose muscle mass, we start to lose balance, we start to lose coordination, flexibility. And the more you stay sedentary, the more your risk for falling actually increases. So that's pretty much the agenda for today. We're going to talk about the importance of exercises in the senior population, whether you're over 50 or over 60, 70, 80, 90. We work with all those demographics, and it's never too late to move. You might just need to learn some certain types of movement patterns that you can do pain-free to help you. And again, today we're going to be discussing later in the conversation the types of movements that are going to benefit you to help reduce your risk for falling. So we're going to really target those muscle groups specifically. We're going to discuss why exercises regularly is important. We're going to talk about some of the information from the Center for Disease Control on the basic facts about falling and how much of a serious topic this actually is right now, especially as the boomers get older. They have an opportunity right now to really help prevent themselves from falling when they get later in life. So we're going to talk about some of those statistical information from the CDC. And this is something that I thought was really important to talk about. By the age of 75, 1 in 3 men and 1 in 2 women will not engage in physical activity. And that's really amazing to me, because most of us want to live their life to the fullest. They want to be active. They want to engage with their grandkids. They want to be able to get up and down out of a chair without any pain. And the more we stop moving, the more that is going to increase your risk for falling. So for individuals 65 and over, the most common forms of activity are walking and gardening, which is great. In my opinion, I think walking is one of the most underrated movements that somebody can engage in. Just simply going for a walk will help you stay upright more so than if you just stay seated all day long. And the loss of strength and balance and mobility for older adults is often attributed to reducing physical activity. It leads to a sedentary lifestyle. And in my experience working with Prestige and the specific demographic of individuals that are inside of an independent or assisted living community, once those individuals fall, they're very, very scared to fall again. And that leads to more of a sedentary lifestyle, which actually is counterproductive to what we're trying to do in the first place. So if you're one of those individuals that's listening to this right now and you have fallen, I would encourage you to meet with somebody and discuss how you fell, what you can do to maybe change the way that you fell, and really start engaging in some movement pattern of some sort. It's really, really, really important. We're going to get into that later in this discussion. So exercise has been proven to reduce fall risk by up to 34%, and we're going to disclose some of those research topics that were evidence-based later in this discussion as well. Also, the benefits, you're going to decrease your risk for osteopenia. So osteopenia is the loss of bone, and usually in females. It can happen in males too, but it's more common in females, postmenopausal females, which leads to osteoporosis. So resistance training has proven with the help of calcium supplementation to actually reduce your risk for developing osteoporosis, and also stave off the loss of bone loss that happens during osteoporosis. You can also decrease some arthritic pain. Many of us, especially if you're very active when you're younger, you're going to have some form of osteoarthritis as we age. Just unfortunately, the natural part of aging that human beings have. Once you lose the articular cartilage inside of your joints, you're going to lead to developing some sort of osteoarthritis within that joint, and you start to become bone on bone, and it hurts, and you don't want to move anymore. So those are other risk factors associated with getting older. We want to really focus on flexibility and having a pain-free lifestyle. We want to talk about some ambulatory aids today. We're going to talk about your activities of daily living. We're going to make it easier to tie your shoes. That's kind of a joke from a little client of mine. And we're going to talk about improving your balance. This is something when I was back about 7-8 years ago when I was first asked to do this presentation with Prestige. The National Institute of Health has this great quote that I love. And falls don't just usually happen, and people don't fall because they get older. Often there is usually one underlying cause or risk factor directly associated with the fall. And I think it's really important moving forward that if you have fallen quite a few times, I think it's really important to really find out why are you falling and really kind of uncover some of those risk factors. Is it because you tripped over a rug? Is it because you're just inactive and you aren't as steady as you used to be? Are you taking 5 or more medications? Do you have some form of urinary tract infection? So it's not just that you fell, but it's really trying to uncover and find out why we fell down and trying to actually associate that with how we can actually prevent you from falling again. So these next few slides are from the CDC. You can go to the CDC's website. They have a whole host of information. I love their webpage on fall prevention. It's really gotten a lot more in depth because more people are falling every year, unfortunately, as we're going to disclose in the next few slides. And these next few slides are not intended to scare you at all. It's really just to raise awareness on how big of an issue this topic really is and how big of an issue this is going to be as the boomers get older in the next 10 years. So if you're between 65 and 75, in 10 years, you have an opportunity now to invest in your health and your wellness and start engaging in some form of movement and balance and flexibility and mobility training to prevent your risk for falling when you get older. So according to the CDC, approximately 50% of all seniors over the age of 80 will fall annually. That's pretty high. So if we can prevent that and drop that number to maybe 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 over the next 10 years, I think that'd be awesome. But people have to start moving, and you have to get the information, and you have to learn the proper movement patterns to help you not fall down. And that's what we're going to talk about in about 10 or 15 minutes. Also, according to the CDC, 1 out of 5 falls causes some form of significant injury. I believe this slide was in 2015. I don't quote me on that. But the CDC reported 3 million non-fatal falls that were treated in the ER. And of those 3 million falls, 800,000 people were hospitalized because of the fall. So that's pretty staggering. And most of those people, not all, are going to sustain some form of injury. And it's kind of like everybody knows, like, oh man, I don't want my mom to fall down and break her hip. Well, there's other significant injuries that can happen too. You can have a laceration, you can have a fracture of your arm or your wrist or your hand. You can hit your head on something and have a significant concussion. So 95% of the injuries are hip fractures, but there's other risk factors and injuries that occur with falling too. And again, like I said before, most individuals in this demographic, through my experience, they do not want to disclose that they fell down to the significant other or their loved ones because they don't want to lose more independence, and they're embarrassed, and they just will almost want to hide it. It's absolutely fascinating to me how when I gave this discussion live in person before the pandemic, we used to give this presentation live inside of Prestige's buildings. And when I was done with the discussion, there would be 30 people waiting to come and have a private conversation with me afterwards because they were really embarrassed that they fell and they wanted to learn what they could do. So it's pretty crazy how many people are actually falling down. So here's the slide that I was kind of touching on earlier. And in 2015, the medical costs, and this isn't about cost, but it is unfortunately part of the falling that's happening in the United States. There was exceeds of $50 billion in fall-related medical expenses. By 2030, there will be 7 deaths from falls every hour in the United States. So that's what we're trying to really prevent right now, is by the time we get to 2030, and that number is based on the number of boomers and the current number of people that are falling and being injured right now. Okay, so now we're going to get into what can you do about it. And many individuals, they raise their families, they have a house that they were able to walk around in, they weren't really planning for the future. And wow, all of a sudden I'm 70, 80, 90, or 100 years old. And we need to actually address our living quarters for fall prevention. So what can we do? These are real simple tips. If you go to the National Institute of Health, they have a great website on what you can do too. AARP has a great website. CDC has a great website. If you just typed in like, how can I fall proof my home? There'll be a whole host of information that you can choose from. But we're going to give you some basic, real simple tips that you can actually fall proof your home without spending too much money. Lighting is critical, and we're going to discuss later why our eyes play such a vibrant role in our ability to walk through space. But lighting is critical. You can go down to a local hardware store and pick up some photosensor kid lights and put them all throughout your house. You can put them in the hallway, you can put them in your bathrooms, you can put them in your kitchens, so that when you go to bed at night, those lights will actually automatically turn on. So even if you forget to turn or leave a light on, those lights will just automatically turn on when it goes dark. And they're not that expensive, and they plug right into the wall, so you don't have to worry about batteries going bad either, which is great, unless the power goes out in your house, unfortunately. But when you go to sleep at night, your house will be lit. So if you have to get up and go use the restroom at night, or somebody knocks on your door, you're going to wake up and be able to actually see where you're going without tripping on anything. Loose rugs, everybody has their nice favorite rug. It's nice, expensive rugs, but you can go to, like I said, the local hardware store also and buy some non-slip pieces of plastic and put under your rug. If your rugs are really thick, I used to train a lady in her house, and she loved this Marilyn Monroe rug that she bought from Lowe's, and it was really expensive, but it was 4 inches tall and it was plush. And I was like, Marilyn, you gotta get rid of that thing. And her daughter was like, do you think my mom should have this in her house? I'm like, probably not a good idea. And she used a walker and got around, but bless her soul, she got rid of the rug. So that was good. So avoid the slick surfaces, avoid rugs that can slide out from underneath you, especially if you have a walker or you're on crutches. You can actually push on that and it will slide and get away from you. Avoid clutter. And this is where you can kind of incur a little bit of cost, but it might be beneficial. Redo some bathrooms, have some grab rails by your bathroom, by your toilet. Maybe put in a tub that you can actually walk through and you don't have to stepping into, and then have some sort of non-slip surface on the floor of your tub is really, really important. So if you want some other tips and tricks, visit NIHseniorhealth.gov, or just type in, how can I fall proof my house? Other environmental factors too, consider, I'm from Vancouver, Washington, and it rains a lot. So sometimes you have to, it doesn't really snow very often, which is good. But if you're in a snowy area and it's icy, you want to be careful about that. Also, you want to make sure that your footwear fits you well. So not a lot of flip-flops, not a lot of big, long robes that you can trip over. And this is my favorite part of the discussion, and I'm sure everybody came on for this, like, which exercises can I engage in? And the next little bit of this discussion, we're going to give you some examples on that. So what can you do, and how can you fall proof yourself? Number one, have your eyes checked regularly by your eye physician. So we process so much information visually through our eyes. And if you watch somebody walk, we're going to get into the biomechanics of how we walk here in a few minutes. And if you watch a senior who isn't very stable, they're going to assume a very forward posture, a very kyphotic posture. That means their shoulders are going to be rounded forward. They're going to be gazing straight down at the ground because their eyes are trying to process the information off the ground, and they are going to be shuffling, the classic shuffle. And that's what we're going to talk about very shortly here about how we can stop that shuffling and how we can get you stronger so you can actually move through space more efficiently. So like I touched on earlier, make sure your clothes fit you well. Make sure that your ergonomic aids and your walkers are fitted to you. I can't tell you how many times I've been at a Prestige senior living community or seen some seniors walking like at Fred Meyer's with their walker, and they are letting their walker walk them. So make sure that your walker is properly fitted to you. A lot of times people, they just get a walker from their friend. Oh, I got this from my friend, and it's not fitted to them. So that, again, it lends to poor posture, and it's not really helping you walk very well. So make sure your walker isn't walking you, and make sure you're walking your walker. Engage in postural stability and control strengthening exercises, and engage in some form of resistance, balance, and mobility training and aerobic fitness to help your overall strength and to maintain muscle mass. So here's a couple of studies. And again, this isn't a college course, so we're not going to go deep into the literature, but just know that there is significant amount of evidence-based research out there right now that is finding if seniors engage in some form of exercise and movement pattern that is holistic and comprehensive, you can reduce your risk for falling up to 35 to 34%. So that's pretty significant. So that could take that number that the CDC has right now from 1 in 2 seniors potentially up to 1 in 3 or possibly 1 in 4. So I'm going to be really curious to see what's going to happen over the next 10 years and see what happens with the information, because I do know that many of my clients are in their I would say the majority of my clients currently are between 60 and 82. And they're actually very concerned about losing their strength and their ability to just do the active things that they enjoy. So you can get stronger. I have a client right now that's 73 years old, and he's expressed to me that this is the strongest he's ever felt in his life. So that's very rewarding to me. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty about some programming with regards to exercise. Really important. Before you engage in an exercise program, you're definitely going to want to find some form of professional that either specializes inside your world or can understand and speak to your physician with regards to your health. So if you're a diabetic, if you have some form of heart medication, whether it's a cholesterol med or a beta blocker or a statin, if you're taking all kinds of different medications, or if you have any osteoarthritic changes to your body, so you hurt your knee, you hurt your ankle, you hurt your foot, you hurt your shoulder, you hurt your neck, that individual that you work with, whether it's a physical therapist or a personal trainer, needs to have enough background and information to train you efficiently and effectively so that they don't hurt you further, and that you are motivated and want to hold yourself accountable to that individual so that you can actually see the results. And it's going to take a little while for you to get the results, especially if you've been sedentary. I use this example with my clients all the time that come in, they've been sedentary for a long time. And I just say it's years to days. I mean, for the last 10 years, you've sat on your bottom and haven't done anything. And it's only been about 4 weeks of training and they want results. And it's like, you have to give yourself at least a year. There's a really good book. I can't remember the author, but it's called Younger Next Year by 2 physicians. If you want this information kind of like presented to you in a book copy, that's a great book to read. It's called Younger Next Year. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the author's names, but if you type in Younger Next Year, the book will pop up and it's a great read. It's very simple and it's written by a couple of doctors, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the names off the top of my head. So here's a couple of certifications that I would recommend looking at if you were to go to like a LA Fitness or 24-Hour Fitness or boutique personal training studio in your neck of the woods or your state. These are some nationally accredited personal training certifications. Unfortunately, physical therapy right now can only take you so far unless you decide to pay cash to a physical therapist. They can only do so much for you with regards to billing your insurance. So most of this extracurricular activity is going to be placed in a cash pay world, unfortunately, or a small group setting. Or if you are a member of or a resident of Prestige Senior Living, we actually have wellness coaches inside of our facilities that are doing exercises with our residents. So make sure that the individual has one or a couple of these personal training certifications. So NATA, that's National Athletic Trainers Association, ACE, NSCA, NASM, ISSA, ACSM. Bachelor's of Science in Exercise Physiology or Kinesiology is really good. That those individuals are going to have specific information given to them during their college years that's really going to break down anatomy, posture, biomechanics, and it can really help you get through what you need to work on. Also, if you engage with a personal trainer, if they're not conducting some form of fitness assessment or physician screen on you, I would be leery. I'm really adamant with my clients on the first day we sit down, we have a talk, we just make sure that it's going to be a good fit. But then I go through, my company goes through and assesses their posture. We discuss physician needs. We discuss post-medical conditions, current medical conditions. And then we create a program based on what that client needs for themselves individually. So it's a little bit more tailored, but it's really, really important so that you can have a positive outcome and get stronger without hurting yourself. And that's everyone's biggest concern, is becoming injured with activity. And always consult with your physician before engaging in some form of exercise program. It will help you. And I'll promise most of your physicians are going to give you a huge thumbs up, but they will say, hey, does this individual that you want to work with, do you trust them? What's their background? So it's important to do your research when you're looking for somebody to work with. Okay, so we're going to talk about developing your exercise fall reduction program. So we want to focus on increasing strength, increasing flexibility and mobility, and working on balanced targeted exercises. And the next few slides, we're going to go deeper into what we should be doing and how you should be doing it. I have a couple of videos that we're going to show you here shortly and give you just a little taste of some things that you can do from a strengthening standpoint, whether you're sedentary or you're able to stand still. So make sure you utilize our healthcare professional and get tested and reassess your assessment like every couple months. Make sure you're getting reassessed. Okay, so this is my favorite part of the discussion coming up now. All right, so we're all talking, everybody's kind of moving into this fall prevention world. Well, what are we trying to do and why are we trying to do it? So in order to really discuss which exercises we want to choose for fall prevention, we need to first look into biomechanics and how humans walk. There's some great research out that is examining and correlating how fast an individual can travel through space directly impacts how great of a fall risks there are. Meaning, if I can walk from point A to point B in 2 seconds versus a 100-year-old gentleman that takes 30 seconds, his fall risk is going to be greater because his gait speed is slower. So if you have a faster gait, your propensity for falling is lower. If you have a slower gait, your propensity for falling is higher. Makes pretty common sense, right? So it's really important which muscle groups are actually making us walk efficiently. And how are we going to get rid of the shuffle to where when we were younger, when we can stand up tall and actually walk. So in order to understand that, we need to break down our gait and how the human being actually ambulates or walks through space. So there's essentially 3 phases of our gait cycle. It's going to be heel strike, it's going to be mid stance, and it's going to be toe off. And on the opposite side, your other foot's going to be doing the opposite of the other foot. The cool thing is we're never really on one foot at once, we're never on both feet at the same time. We're always picking, placing, falling, recovering. So it's that pick, place, recover, pick, place, recover, pick, place, recover, instead of shuffle that we want to work on inside of the gym and give individuals exercises that are going to help them engage that musculature that's going to pick, place, balance, pick, mid stance, balance, return. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about next, is what are those muscle groups and why should I be training them? I can't tell you how many times that I have a client that said, oh man, I wanted to start getting in shape and I went to a gym and I didn't know what to do. I saw this guy doing this exercise over here and I did it. And I'm like, okay, well, why were you doing that? What's your objective? So that's where a healthcare professional or personal trainer or a physical therapist can really help you pick those exercises that are going to help you walk through space more efficiently. So here's the hip and thigh anatomy. Again, this isn't a college course, so we're not going to dive super deep into the big, strong, fancy words, but just know, so the hip flexors and your quads and your calves and your glutes are going to be really important in helping you walk through space more efficiently. Those are the muscles that help us stand up on one foot. Those are the muscles that help us sit down and stand up. Those are the muscles that help us walk up a curb, get into a car, and it goes up the kinetic chain. So that's the middle of your anatomy. And then here's your lower extremity musculature. So certain muscles that make your foot go down, up, in, out, they flex your toes, they extend your toes, are all inside your calf. So these are some of the musculatures that we're going to want to focus on when we prescribe exercises for fall prevention or fall reduction. And when we sit for long periods of time, these muscles start to atrophy. And that's why it's very hard for an individual. If you've seen a very sedentary individual sitting in a chair, for example, my mother-in-law, for example, just the other day, she was sitting in a really deep chair and it was really hard for her to get out. So we want to help her train that muscle group that's going to help get her off the chair more efficiently and more fluidly. And here's just an example with your plantar flexion and dorsiflexion of your foot. Again, a really important muscle group and joint that starts to atrophy and not be used. So an individual that doesn't walk and can't push off isn't going to have as much good gait as somebody that can push off effectively. For example, like somebody that's going to run. All right, so the 4 domains of exercise, according to the American College of Sports Medicine, that we're going to touch on here in the next 20 or so minutes. We're going to talk about resistance training, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples of those. Excuse me. We're going to talk about some aerobic physical activity. How much should you do? How long should you do it? How many days a week should you do it? We're going to talk about flexibility and mobility training. Again, what's the duration? What's the intensity? What's the frequency? And then we're going to talk specifically about some balance drills that you can actually do right at home in the luxury of your own home. So it doesn't take a lot to start doing these exercises. So with regards to strength and resistance, 2 to 3 times a week with a rest day between sessions. We're not professional athletes in this world. We don't need to be doing 7-day periodized splits or 6-day periodized splits. And that's all that means is that you're training 7 days a week and you're giving every major muscle group 48 hours to recover. That's kind of like a professional athlete or elite level athlete. That's what they're going to kind of do. And within their year calendar, they're going to break out 3 separate groups of workouts while they're in season, out of season, and preseason. But for us right now in this demographic, we just want you to move and we want to maintain muscle and not lose muscle. We also want to work on cognition. So if we can just teach our brain how to move our body again, that's really going to help stave off some of those cognitive declines as well. So it's beneficial. Exercise is really beneficial in a lot of domains. It's going to help stave off depression, anxiety, potentially cognitive decline, and it's going to maintain your muscle mass. So 2 to 3 times per week. The examples of training for resistance are going to be any loaded activity. So like whether it's a resistance band or a free weight, or if you have the luxury of getting into a gym, so some resistance machines. If you're just starting out, I would recommend doing 1 set of 10 repetitions at a moderate to lighter weight, and then progress over the first 4 to 6 weeks, get up to 3 sets of 10 to 20 repetitions over 4 to 6 weeks. For example, first week, start off with 1 set of 10 on 5. And we're going to talk about the 5 primary movements in a second. For the first 2 weeks, because you haven't done anything for a while. Week 2 to 3, progress to 2 sets of 10 to 20 reps. And then weeks 4 through 6, progress to 3 sets to 10 to 20 reps. And again, it's based differently for every individual. So it's kind of like a broad picture. that's kind of like what I do with my clients, where I kind of progress them, especially if they've been very sedentary. I progress them through the first 8 weeks in that manner. And for me, it's worked really, really well with reducing their risk for developing any chronic overuse injuries, or actually fighting off a lot of the chronic overuse injuries that they've sustained before they see me. So with regards to this demographic, and just from a general health standpoint, if you're watching this and you're in their 40s or 50s or 60s, your exercise program should consist of these types of movements: a push, a pull, a hip hinge, a squat, some form of lateral movement, which we rarely do in our lives. We walk forward, rarely walk backwards as well. We walk forward and that's it. So again, unless you're an elite level athlete or very active, you're moving a lot of lateral speed, agility, and quickness type movements. But for this group, we can still incorporate those movements because that's usually when a lot of falls occur too, is when somebody steps laterally or posterior laterally or backwards or kind of to the left, so we want to train all motions, all 3 planes of motion. So here's a couple of clients of mine. We're going to progress through a few videos, and I'm not going to give you every single type of exercise out there, but these are just some examples. So if you're new to exercise and you want to start, I would recommend with a seated march in place. And the audio on this might be a little crazy, but this is Christy. She's one of my clients. But here's something that you can do in the courtesy of your own home. It's a seated march in place. I would recommend starting doing this for 10 to 20 repetitions. So like left and right is 1. Do that like 10 times or so. Here's a frontal view of what it's looking like. And again, the reason why we want to do this one to start is this is going to work on that hip flexor muscle group. So that's the first exercise with regards to improving our gait. This is when she's going to lift her leg up and she's going to strike the ground with her heel. So that hip flexor is going to lift and extend into mid stance. Ooh, she doesn't want to stop. The next exercise to start, if you are, again, not comfortable with standing exercises and you need to start with some seated based exercises, you're in a wheelchair or you just cannot stand up on your own, this first grouping of exercises for those individuals. So people that are kind of needing to be in a chair. These are our seated based exercises to start. This one is one of my more favorite ones for individuals that cannot do a complete sit to stand, meaning they have a hard time standing up out of a chair. They need to lean forward and grab onto their walker or grab onto something and actually pull themselves up. This is just a modified chair get up. And you can do this one. And you're just using your arms to kind of help push you up. To start, you can start with having your arms push you up, but eventually I would like to see my clients barely use their hands and just use their legs and hold for 2 to 3 seconds and then sit back down. So you're going to get up like you're almost getting off the chair and then just sit back down. And we're going to gauge those big, strong glutes. And he's just kind of using his hands to help him a little tiny bit. But that's going to be a really good starting point to the next exercise, which is a full chair sit to stand. So once you can do the modified half chair get up, then I want you to try to do 1 set of 10 just full sit to stand exercises. And this is a great exercise for seniors because you need to sit and stand. You have to go to the restroom. You got to get in and out of your car. You got to get up and down from wherever you are, sitting and standing. So just doing 10 reps to start is fabulous. If that's too hard, just start with the march in place and the modified chair sit up, modified chair sit up. Okay. Next exercise is going to be, we're primarily talking about our lower extremity, but we're going to move into a little bit of our core and flexibility. We need to be able to bend down and pick things up off the floor. So this is a great exercise. It's called a dive or a forward dive. And all you're going to do is just take a big, deep breath in and see how you can get down and almost touch or pick something off the floor. Very, very simple. You can start with 10 of these. And again, these are seated. Now, if you notice here, this client's name is Mike. If you notice, he's very far forward in the chair. So this would be a more advanced position. If you're just starting out, I would recommend that you scoot really far back against the chair so that the chair is supporting your lumbar spine. and just take a nice big deep breath in and only go to where you feel comfortable. He's very flexible. He's 66 years old. He's still very mobile and very able. His back is fine. He can do all these movements. But if you have a little bit of back issues and it hurts, don't do it, obviously. But if you can get through this range of motion and come down and pretend almost like you're going to pick up something off the floor and then work up to it and then progress to getting farther and farther. If you are unable to reach your hand above your head because you have some sort of shoulder pathology, you can actually do this exercise with your hands crossed, and you can just come down forward and sit up nice and tall. Really good one again for that plantar flexion, or excuse me, for that toe off of our gait. We want to push and propel ourselves forward, is going to be a heel and toe range of motion exercise. So this one's really simple. He's just going to move his feet up and down. Really good range of motion movement. Oops, sorry. There we go. So you can do 10 of those. Again, you want to try to be able to do it to where you can lift the whole ball of your feet off of the ground. So heel up, toe up, heel up, toe up. So that's going to work that one part of our gait where we're really propelling ourselves off the ground, swinging our leg, heel striking, mid stance, and doing it all over again on the opposite side. Here's a really fun one too. This is a modified jumping jack. You can do this one. This one's really important for our big, strong muscles in our hip that control our balance when we're actually on one foot. So when we're in that gait pattern and we're going heel strike, mid stance, when we're in mid stance, these big, strong glute muscles actually help us stand up on one foot, and they prevent our big, strong thigh bone from caving in. And this is a modified chair jumping jack. And he's just doing a single leg with a little quick run in the middle there. So a little quick agile agility mixed in. And if you can work up, this would be the step one for this movement. If you can only do one leg at a time, that's fine. If you need to do one leg and then, so if you go left, right, if that's too hard, you can just start with left for 1, left for 2, left for 3, up to 10, and then do the right side, right 1, right 2. And then if you can progress to doing what Mike's doing here, left, right, or the next progression would be actually doing a full jumping jack with your hands. So your hands out, legs together, clapping would be 1. And that's going to take a lot of good, strong core strength and core stability up inside your upper chain to actually stabilize your upper torso when you actually do that. So if you do this exercise, make sure you don't go into lumbar flexion when you're doing it. So you want to stand up really, really tall, sit up tall, engage your core, engage your stomach, and up and out with your abs. So again, we're using that a little bit more of a plyometric movement here, hitting our hip flexors, our gluteus medius, a little bit of our calf musculature, and it's a little coordination drill too, right? So we're having to use our brain. So we're engaging that neuroplasticity that's really common right now in cognition. And just a little side note, neuroplasticity it's just a big buzzword. Well, it's not a big buzzword. It is what it is. It's engaging more neurons inside of your brain. And much of science is finding that the brain's primary function is to control human movement. So just like when you're a little kid and you're learning how to catch a ball, up till about 20, in our mid 20s, we learn a bunch of movement patterns, like how to brush your teeth, which arm you're going to throw with. And then we kind of go on autopilot. And then when we get a little older, we start to forget how to move. So the neurological component of movement is really important for helping our brain and reducing cognitive decline. Okay, so that's just a small example of some seated-based exercises. And we really didn't go into the upper body stuff because I don't have a lot of time today, but there are some upper body things that you can do as well. I just really feel that with our limited time today, our lower extremity examples are going to give you more bang for your buck. And that's really what we need to work on more right now, is in terms of like getting out of the chair and moving through space. But let's pretend now that you are an able individual. You're in independent living. You're maybe, 50 to 85. I mean, Bill on the right here, he's 84. And Dr. Brenna's here is 82. So these are two of my 80-year-old clients. Phil is a retired pediatrician, and Bill is a retired graphic designer. So Phil's going to demonstrate a standing march in place, optimally no holding on. But if you need to hold on to something, obviously we have the luxury in my gym here. This is my personal training studio. but we have a nice bar to hold on to. But you can do this at a countertop. You can do it with a chair. You can do it next to a wall. Just make sure if you're not steady, and you'll see here in a couple of the videos coming up how unsteady these gentlemen are, that you're just holding on to something. But I've trained Phil. I've been working with Phil for almost 15 years, so I'm very comfortable videotaping him and standing far away from him. But a standing march in place. So big 90-degree swing on the hip flexors there. Big, tall. See how you can see his posture's a little forward. We're trying to prevent that forward posture from happening more and more and more. So here's a variation of Bill coming in with another different variation of the hip flexor movement. It's a little more power driven. And it's just a single. He's transferring his weight up to almost doing a single leg balance exercise. And he's driving his weight forward. And that right foot is having to prevent him from falling down, even though he is holding on. He does do it not holding on, but just for sake of this video, for safety, I wanted to show all these next slides with a little bit of support. So Phil's just demonstrating a nice march in place, and Bill's demonstrating a little bit more power movement with a little, almost the same muscular, just a little different angle and a little different drive with regards to what his right leg has to be doing. Okay, so number 2, that was march in place, standing. So now we're doing standing ones. So it's a progression. So if you need to start with the seated ones and then progress to a standing, that's totally cool. So here's a sit to stand. Again, he doesn't have a chair, but he does have a bench underneath him. So he's going to sit and stand. Now, one thing that you're going to notice when you try to, when you try to do the sit to stand for the first time, you're going to really want to throw yourself forward. We don't want that. We want you to be able to stand almost as straight up as you possibly can. So don't use momentum to sit up off the chair. Use those big, strong glute muscles in the back to lift yourself off the chair. So again, we worked with Phil for a long time, and he can do this pretty well. Not bad for 83 years old. And here's Dr. Grannis again. Now this exercise is really important, and I had him do it improperly here on purpose to show you what I would recommend to make some corrections in this movement right here that he's doing. So if you notice him, this is called hip abduction, or a leg swing, or a scissor, whatever you want to call it to make it easier to remember. But the correct anatomical termination for his leg moving away from his body is called abduction. So the muscle up in his hip that he's working on right now is really important for maintaining single leg balance. So this muscle is really important to maintaining that good quality control of movement when you're on one foot. So whether you're bouncing on one foot, or again, when you're walking and transferring your weight from left to right, this muscle is really critical and should be done by most individuals. If you have a hip replacement, I've seen some videos on YouTube where they actually do a complete leg swing where they cross the midline of their body and they swing out. That's not for you. If you've had a hip replacement, only come to neutral where Phil is and then swing out. Okay, you can go out, you just can't come all the way across and out. If you hadn't had a hip replacement, you can go all the way across your midline of your body. Just try not to torque your lower back and get too much rotation in your lumbar spine. So on this exercise, hang on. Sorry. Okay, so if you watch Phil on this one, he's externally rotating his right toe. Watch his right toe. See how he's swinging his right toe? So he's lifting, but he's swinging. So his femur is externally rotating away from his body. We don't want to engage that muscle group. We want to keep his foot neutral, so toe forward, and lead with the outside to the heel of your foot. So you really want to focus on moving your heel away and not your toe. So I had him kind of do that improperly on purpose, just because if you watch people in the gym, usually they tend to externally rotate and swing, and they don't lift out. And it's the reason why is because you're using a bigger, stronger muscle, and it's easier for your body to externally rotate and swing than it is to actually keep neutral and lift. And that's the muscle that we want to work on. When you do it properly, you're going to feel like the side of your booty is cramping. And when the side of your booty is cramping, then you know you're doing it right. I'll always have my clients grab oh man, right there. I'm like, yeah, right there. So that's really, really important. Okay, another really good movement is leg swing. So again, you can hold on with this and just practice lifting and swinging your leg. It's a great movement for fall prevention. It's a great movement for strength. Again, we're hitting that hip flexor and our glute, hip flexor, glute. Start with holding on and then try not to hold on and do it. It's a lot more challenging not holding on to maintain good postural control up your kinetic chain, but you can do it. To start, I would recommend actually, if you're holding on with your left hand, I would swing your left leg on this one and not your outer leg. But again, we've been working with Phil for a long time and we were challenging him that day. Another example, like we did with the seated toe lifts, heel lift, is we're going to do a standing toe lift, heel lift. So Bill's coming really up on his toes, swinging up and lifting his toe, lifting his heel, lifting his toe, lifting his heel. And that is really helping train the musculature in your calf for absorbing the forward motion that you're engaging in when you walk and pushing yourself against gravity and lifting and placing against gravity. Last but not least, I would recommend if you're to do this one, make sure you do it with a trainer, but this is a modified hip hinge. And this is really important with regards to engaging those big, strong muscles in your hips. So it's kind of like a modified Romanian deadlift, but all we're doing is we're just hinging at the hips this time. We're not squatting, we're actually hinging. So butt out, nice. You look at his back right there, the angle of his back from his head to his butt is really nice and flat. The only thing that he was doing in this first rep that I had him do just for sake of teaching you guys the proper biomechanics of doing this one, if you watch him, he actually comes really far over his toes. See how he extends right there? So we don't want to do hyperextension on your lumbar spine. We just want to come back to neutral, like right there. So butt out, back to neutral. So right there, don't do that. Just come to right there, okay? When you do this one efficiently, you're going to feel it right where your hamstring meets your glute. So right underneath your butt cheek, right where that big, strong hamstring comes up, you're going to feel that want to cramp up. Okay, so that was just some that was just some examples of some lower extremity strengthening exercises for seated and standing from a resistance standpoint. And again, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot more that you can do, but just make sure that you're getting a push, a pull. So that would be like a chest press, a row, a lat pull down. And if you don't know what those words are, talk to somebody, and they should be giving you a comprehensive program that's going to be working on all the muscles throughout your full body. Okay, so that was domain one of how should we get stronger. Domain two is our aerobic activity or cardiovascular activity. And this is going to be really important for getting more O2 oxygen into our body and helping our heart work more efficiently. So how much activity physically of aerobic activity should we do a week? Well, according to the American College of Sports Medicine, they recommend 150 minutes per week. But when you're starting out, I would recommend maybe just starting out with like 5 to 10 minutes every other day. And again, walking, I mean, obviously in a pool workout, but that might not be feasible for you. Riding a stationary bike, any elliptical based trainer, anything that's a little bit more stable. The New Step is a really good tool for seniors that are very unsteady. It's called the New Step. It's kind of a modified elliptical. It's a seated elliptical trainer kind of blended with a bike. It's really cool. Start with 5 to 10 to 15 minutes every day or every other day if you're tired and wiped out, and work up to doing the 150 minutes per week. So that'd be approximately 30 minutes over 7 days. If you can't do that, just start with, like I said, 10 to 15 minutes. And examples, Tai Chi is awesome. Yoga, chair-based yoga. Boxing is really good for if you have Parkinson's and you're really shaky and can't remember. Boxing is awesome for teaching your brain how to remember certain movement patterns. If you work with a boxing coach, really, really awesome exercise. And you don't have to hit anything heavy or hard. You just have to remember, okay, jab, jab, cross, hook, jab, jab, cross, hook. And so your brain has to remember, one, okay, how am I going to do that if I've never boxed before? Two, now I have to remember a movement pattern, which is now we're incorporating neuroplasticity, we're incorporating strength, we're incorporating aerobic fitness, and it's really hard. Like if you just box for a couple of minutes, it's going to get you very, very tired very quickly. Flexibility and mobility training, again, can't can't emphasize this enough, even for young athletes. I think, in my experience, dynamic and static stretching are imperative to staving off athletic injuries, as well as for individuals being able to engage in their activities of daily living. So if you're mobile, stuff's going to hurt less. You're going to be able to move through space more efficiently and effectively. So static stretching, just to educate you on this, if you already know, great. If you don't, static stretching is kind of like the old school stretching where you're going to reach down, you're going to hold and count for 15 to 30 seconds. And the reason why that kind of came to fruition is because inside of our muscle tissue, we have these little stretch receptors and stretch preventers that take approximately 15 to 30 seconds to override. So if you were to reach down and do a quick bounce stretch, you didn't stretch the muscle tissue. You actually told the muscle tendon and the muscle tissue to get tighter. So we want to tell the muscle tissue and the tendon that it's okay to let the muscle belly relax. And that takes about 15 to 30 seconds. And you want to just hold that stretch. Dynamic stretching, on the other hand, is kind of like the newer style of stretching. And there's a lot of current debate in the current literature, especially with regards to high performance movements, that we want to now get the tissue ready for movement. And we want to tell it like, hey, muscle, hey, tendon, hey, joint, we're going to move really quick. And that's dynamic stretching. So if you were to go watch professional anything or Division I anything or Division II or even now high school, I mean, they're training these young athletes like the pro athletes now, which is mind-boggling. And you get there a few minutes early and you watch them warm up, they're going to be doing dynamic-based movement patterns. And it's kind of the new form of stretching. But as an athlete myself, and I'm older, not to disclose how old I am, but let's just say I'm older, we just did static stretching. And then we did some form of agility warm-up when we warmed up when I played soccer in college. So we were basically doing dynamic stretching, but it wasn't really called that back then. Okay, for stretching, we already kind of went over that. The dynamic, you want to do it in repetitions. For the static, you want to hold it for 15 to 30 seconds. Pain-free ranges of motion, really important. If you're moving through a motion and it hurts, stop doing it and talk to somebody and have them give you a different way to move through that same motion pain-free. No pain motions. The stretching pain's okay. Sharp stabbing, burning, any of that type of pain, bad. But the stretching sensation pain is okay. All right. The fourth domain, the balance. And everybody, I starting to feel my balance go not as super able when I was like in my 40s. So we're going to talk about, balance is such, in my opinion, kind of a garbage can term, like, oh, I just don't feel balanced, or I don't know if my balance is very good, or I don't feel very steady, Adrian. I have a client, he's an avid fly fisherman. He's 77. And he was training with me just for balance because he wanted to go on a fly fishing trip in Argentina. And the last time he went, when he was walking through a stream up above his knees, he didn't feel as steady and he didn't want to fall down because it could be a life or death situation there. So we train balance specific training. And that's this next block that we're going to talk about, is specifically how can we actually train balance. But first we have to understand how the human body balances. Just like we had to discuss how the human body walks, how we ambulate. Now we have to kind of talk about hey, what's happening inside the human body when we balance, or how is balance even created? So balance is essentially a combination of three systems that are working together. So you have your eyes, you have your inner ear, and then you have your body's ability to feel the ground and judge where it is in space. Proprioception, somatosensory, those are all the big fancy terms. The inner ear is called your vestibular system, and then you have your visual system. And then we want to start working on training those systems individually. So if you've worked with a physical therapist or a personal trainer and you've had vertigo, and you've done some vestibular training with your PT, they've done these specific exercises with you, but you might have not known why they chose these for you. So we're going to help to kind of open the curtain a little bit and discuss, why did that healthcare professional choose that movement for you? So our eye is so critical in absorbing information as we walk through space. I mean, I can't tell you how many individuals that I see in this demographic that are over 80, that they are just staring at the ground. Like, next time you're in a building or you see a senior walking, watch which way their head is pointed. It's going to be like this. They're going to be gazing down and forward. Why is that? Well, all through our life, our brain loves our eyes. It's the fastest way we can absorb information into our brain. So if we can't see, now we're kind of going like, hey, what's going on? Where am I? Now I might feel a little unsure. So what's our posture going to do? What's our head going to do? It's going to want to look down at the ground because we want to absorb that information so quickly, because we may not be able to just look up and like, hey, John, how's it going? And you walked off a curb, right? So all that information goes in through our eye, goes up into our brain processes it. It tells our muscles what to do. It tells neurologically all of our extremities what to do, and we just do it so fast, and it's so fascinating. So have your eyes checked regularly by your physician. It's really, really important. Okay, so the inner ear. This little important person inside of our inner ear, if you're a little kid and you got on a wheel on a merry-go-round and you step off, what happens? You're super dizzy, right? Well, that's happening because inside your inner ear, you have kind of like what I call like a kelp forest. You have all this little fluid and crystals and seaweed moving around. And what happens is when you spin them really, really quick, they get stuck. And then that sends a signal to your brain that you're dizzy, and you get a little dizzy. So that's what happens when you have vertigo. Those little crystals get stuck. And as we get older, the fluid inside that chamber gets a little thicker. It's more like oil and it's not like water. So it has the propensity to get stuck more often. So for example, with my clients, if I'm stretching them and they're face down and they sit up really fast, I would say 90% of them get dizzy. And that's because all that fluid fell forward, and now they stood up and snapped their head around really fast. And those little crystalline wave kelp forest thingies get stuck. And that's about the easiest layman way that I can describe that. But that is how your brain perceives that dizziness component. And it's happening in your inner ear. So we need to train that. And then the somatosensory proprioception, those are two big fancy words, meaning when your foot touches the ground, you know that you're standing on the ground. Your head tells you you're on the ground. You can feel the ground. I can touch things. So if you have neuropathy, for example, you're more prone to losing your balance because you have 1/3 of these systems not working efficiently as it could. So we could train for that too. So here's some, now just little disclosure. Please, if you're not doing any of these exercises, balance specific training drills, I want you to start off holding on to something. And if you don't feel steady and you're not ready for it, don't do it, and consult with somebody that can help you. It's really, really critical. Okay, single leg balance drill. First one. Excuse me. Oops. So I'm just having Phil look forward, casting his gaze forward. And what you can do from a progression standpoint, he's going to start with both feet on the ground, lift one foot off the ground, and then to progress, he's going to lift one hand up and then progress to lifting the other hand up and then progress to having no hands. Hang on a sec. My dog needs to go outside. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. So that's a good solid progression for single leg balance. Standing on one foot, holding on with two hands, progress to holding on with one hand, and then progress to holding with no hands. If you get good at that, holding for 15 to 30 to 60 seconds, now try it with your eyes closed. Aha, we're going to take one system out. We're going to take your eyes away, and we're going to force your inner ear and your foot to tell your brain that you are balancing and standing upright. Again, when you start with your eyes closed, make sure, please, that you're holding on or touching something, because the worst thing you want to do is fall backwards or to the side. If you have somebody watching you do this exercise and you start and you progress to where you're closing your eyes, your head is naturally going to fall down. So have somebody tell you, like, chin up, not ridiculously up, but just keep your chin at neutral. That's going to force your inner ear to work, especially when you take your eyes out of the equation. All right, toe touch drill. So this is a really easy dynamic drill that Phil's going to demonstrate for us. So I call it the dot drill or balanced toe touch drill. You can do this in sets of 5 to 10 repetitions. So he has, in the beginning, if you need to, start with 80% on your left foot of your total weight and maybe put 20% on your toe. But I want you to try to work up to doing where you have 100% or 95% of your load on your left foot and just tapping or touching the ground with maybe 5% and maybe work up to 0% where you're actually just touching the ground around the circle. Now, Phil's doing this demonstration on step 1. Step 2 would be he does not return to the beginning. So he's going to step, 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 and then go back around the horn the way he just came. This is a good starting spot. So he's returning, getting his bearings, and then going into the next repetition. You want to do this bilaterally, so both sides. You always want to do everything both sides. Don't just focus on one side. And then when you get strong enough and you feel stable enough, you can do this with one hand and then no hands. It's a really simple exercise. It's going to really help work on your balance and coordination. Okay, next one is a heel to toe walk. Now we're getting a little more deep into kind of like the third and fourth step of balance training. But look at Phil's head right here. Now I'm going to challenge him and I'm going to make him do a heel toe walk. Again, if you're going to try this, make sure you have something to hold on to. Okay. Now look at his head. Where's he looking? He's already looking down. And you can see he is 83 years old. So this is for real. You can see how unsteady he is when he does this. So we need to have him close to the rail. So heel toe, but look where he's looking. He is looking down. And so I'm going to verbally cue him to look up, but he is literally looking right at the ground. He's looking at his feet because he is losing that awareness of where his feet are in space. If I had him close his eyes and do that, he would probably fall down. I would never do that. Okay, now that's forward walking heel to toe. Now, if you're going to start with that and you don't feel comfortable going, again, I've trained this gentleman for almost 15 years. If you aren't comfortable going full heel toe, you can go tandem. So you can kind of start with just heel to my instep, toe to my instep, toe to my instep, toe to my instep, toe to my instep, and then kind of work to going to a full heel to toe. So one last time. And then the next one, now once you get good at that, we're going to do a backwards walk. And this is really challenging. So backwards heel toe, he's still looking down. He doesn't want to look forward. He still wants to look down at the ground, which is okay. I mean, this is a really challenging exercise. And again, I would never be this far away from him if I didn't train him 2 times a week. So just disclosure on that. If that was a newer client of mine, I would be literally standing right next to them the first time, and I'd make them hold on to the bar just with their hand, just so that they can actually feel where they are in space. Okay. So those are some examples of some balance drills. And again, there's a whole host of those. Those are just 3 that I really like that are pretty straightforward and easy. You can do them in your own home. But there are a lot of progressions. There's progressions where you can walk looking side to side, looking up and down. I mean, there's a lot of different movements you can do. But to keep for the beginning, just kind of pick 3 or 4 movements and start with that. You know, it doesn't have to be super, super detailed. Okay, so we're almost done here. Lastly, after all that information I just gave you about training for your gait, training for your flexibility, training for your aerobic capacity, your cardiovascular efficiency, training your balance, why are people letting their walkers walk them? I don't understand. This gentleman, for example, is just a picture that I picked off the internet. He is so forward. And he's going to do the shuffle, 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 I promise. But he is already putting almost all of his upper body weight on that poor walker. Look at his right arm. Look at his right wrist. I mean, all of his weight is on that walker. If that walker takes a little slip to the left, he's going down. So I would strongly recommend that if you are in an ergonomic aid and you get a little stronger, to actually use your walker as a balance training tool, not as a crutch. So try not to put all of your weight on there. Try to get your hips forward and just go slow and hold on gently and move the walker, and then actually step, step, and then move the walker, step, step. And now the walker isn't walking you. And now you're actually strength training every day with every step that you take, instead of really just dropping all your weight onto that walker. Just food for thought.